Hello, good afternoon. Thank you so much for the introduction, and I can't wait to share with you this afternoon everything that I've learned so far about teaching and learning in an online environment. So, as mentioned before in the introduction, I'm Alfonso Juan Mangubat. So, I've been a teacher for 9 years. I'm currently working at Key School Manila, where I am the program coordinator for our international program for grades 11 and 12. And as mentioned, I also have the following accolades as well. So, I really hope that you enjoy this session with me today. And I hope that you learn a lot because over the past 3 months, I have also learned a lot of things about teaching and learning in an online environment. So, to start off with our session this afternoon, here is a roadmap of what we're going to be learning or what I'm going to be talking about over the next few or over the next hour. So, basically, I'll start off first with a reflection of what we've done, what my school and what my team has done in order for us to prepare for this online learning and also prepare our students as we come into the new school year, which is just a few weeks ago. After I share that reflection, I'll also start sharing also those different approaches to online learning that have really helped us and have provided us with a roadmap of what we're going to be doing over the next 10 months and also preparing our students to ensure that they maximize their learning in an online class environment. And of course, I'll also be sharing some tips that have helped my teachers, myself included, as well as students as well. There might be some topics here that might feel a little bit not within your context, but nevertheless, I still feel that it is something worth sharing because as we navigate this new online learning environment, any form of strategy, techniques, methods are really helpful and beneficial regardless of what school you're teaching in, or whether you're a progressive school, a local school, a public school. These are some things that are still important and to keep in mind. Okay, so with that in mind, I hope that you're ready. I'm also ready to share what we've learned so far. Okay, so to start off, teaching and learning in our school has always placed an emphasis on student collaboration and interaction. Many of our learning engagements and opportunities are designed for students to interact with their peers. This may be in the form of discussions, shares, debates, and working on different collaborative projects. Some of those teaching and learning collaborative moments can come also from the resource speakers that we invite, the field trips that we go to, so that our students can also see firsthand how these different concepts that they learn in the classroom are used and applied in real life contexts. And at the same time, when we take all of that from all of those collaborative learning experiences from our students really engage with one another. There is really that strong debate and social skills that they decide to really talk and challenge and also um, go deeper into the ideas of what we are learning about. And so our learning has always centered on that collaborative approach because we believe that not all students or not no one is an island basically. And so we believe that if we have a lot of minds working together, then our learning inside the classroom will become even more significant, meaningful, and purposeful for our students. So, in line with that collaborative aspect of learning, there is also an emphasis for us to actually make our classrooms experiential and inquiry based learning. And what that means is that we really provide opportunities for our students to look into that concept through the different contexts that they're working in. This could mean engaging in a in the local province or in the community that we live in. It could also mean that our students are asking a lot of questions in order for them to really understand and make the learning theirs. So what that means is that when we adopt this experiential and inquiry-based learning, our students actually play an active role in the learning process. We really value the hands-on learning and activities of our students. And we believe that that learning is actually powerful because when our students get to touch, manipulate, and also work around different experiments or even talk to different people, that learning actually makes it even deeper and meaningful for them. That's why we've always placed an emphasis on those learning experiences because these are central to their understanding and also to their learning. That's why the when the Department of Education or when the government said that classes would be suspended starting March 10, a lot of us teachers really were caught off guard, myself included, because first of all, we still had a few weeks to go before the end of the school year. We don't follow the June to March calendar, but we follow the July to April calendar. And so COVID, or the entrance of COVID, forced us to move or shift to an online learning environment, which was something that none of us were familiar with. Myself included, I've done a lot of online courses. I've participated in a lot of online webinars, but this was something new entirely because for the first time, I wasn't the participant in that webinar. I wasn't the participant, or I was, I was what you call this, a passive or taking a passive role in that online learning environment. And suddenly, with the March 10 suspension of classes, we had to continue on. And it really challenged us because we were so used to this kind of environment of being inside a classroom where a lot of our students are really working actively, discussing amongst themselves, and really talking about what we are learning about. And they had all of these hands on experiences, which for me was something that will be lost as we move into an online learning environment. And so we had to really rethink about what we're going to do. And so so the gist of this whole presentation of mine is really thinking about or rethinking about how we can engage with our students. So our current learning environment requires us to really rethink that. Gone are the days when our students would be able to talk to one another in a physical environment. Because until there is no vaccine, then we will not be able to see those students. Likewise, our students will not also be able to see us, to interact, to engage, to consult, and to really work with us in a physical environment. And so, with that, there we really had to look at the solution. So, from March 10 all the way up to March 14, we were on limbo. That meant that our students, they were busy. We would give them different modules or packets for them to work on. Starting March 16, that's when we would transition into an online learning environment in order for us to cover the last 3 weeks of the school year. Do remember that our school year would end in April. So we still had a couple of weeks to go before the school year actually ended. So with that period from March 10 to March 15, we were hard at work thinking about how to really make sure our teachers were prepared because we were shifting to an emergency online learning system. But at the same time, it was still online learning nevertheless. So within that period, I busied myself preparing my teachers and my team to ensure that we would be using different applications and tools that were available to us. And because we were using a G Suite for Education account, I created these modules for my teachers to make use of, let's say, different applications. As you can see from my screen, I had them try out Pear Deck so that they could create interactive and engaging slides for their teachers, or sorry, for the students, so that there would still be that element of engagement and interaction that is not commonly found in an online learning environment. We also had to think about the different methods of assessing our students. Yes, we could have used Google Forms, but then there were still a lot of questions about how do we ensure that our students aren't cheating, or how do we ensure that the assessments that we are giving would not be tampered or would not be changed. So I gave out, or I looked for different resources that my teachers can use, so that we would be able to still provide that semblance of a routine and also the semblance of a normalcy in an online classroom. And as mentioned also, we also gave out different learning packets. And so my students, for that limbo period, we made use of different learning management systems like Google Classroom. Our French teacher made use of Moodle. And we really relied on these different different learning management systems, because this is what would help bridge first that gap as we prepared for an online class. So when March 16 came along, this is what happened. We provided our students with different Zoom and Google Meet links in order for them to meet with their teachers. So we started off first in a synchronous learning environment. So in this learning environment, a lot of our teachers really engaged with our students as we would normally do. So they had those face-to-face sessions. There was really all of that discussion and debate, and also the presentation of different lessons as well for our students. For a time, it was good. It was working. Our students were able to follow that session, or they were able to follow the routine that we set out for that day. And so our students were working basically. However, since this was just like the first 2 weeks of learning, we encountered some different or some problems that we had never or that we had not foreseen, because this was the first time that we would be doing this. It was actually problematic as we moved along. Some of the problems that arose were Zoom fatigue. Just imagine that we have our students coming to school, online school, at 8:30 in the morning and continuing on with their classes up to 12 noon with barely a break in between. Though we did give them breaks because we knew that they would be moving from one online classroom to the other, it was still tiring for them. Just imagine having to stare at the screen from 8 o'clock to 12 noon. That is quite tiring. And I know as teachers, or even for those people who are working in offices, have known that attending Zoom meetings can actually be quite tiring, even though you're just seated. The second problem that we encountered in this online learning environment was that there were a lot of teacher led discussions. Remember that in our program, we highlight really the students and their capabilities and abilities to learn from one another, their capabilities and abilities also to engage and interact and even collaborate with a lot of their classmates. But using the synchronous learning model, where it was mostly teacher led, a lot of the students were simply just zoning out. They did not feel engaged. They did not feel motivated. They did not enjoy the lessons at all, because really it was you, the teacher, doing most of the talking. Whereas in the past, our students were used to having that two-way exchange between the teacher and the student. We do not really adhere to a lecture type, but it was really more of a discussion, a round table type of classroom setting. And so our students grew tired of that, and they did not really feel motivated. The third point was also using those different breakout rooms and collaboration tools that we now know are present in Zoom. But do remember that this was the first time that we actually used these different tools. And it was challenging for us simply because we did not know how to use it. We had read what we had read different tutorials and watched those tutorials, but it was difficult for us to manage it because we had to half ourselves. One half was listening to the students, the other half was like planning on how to do those different collaboration and breakout rooms for students. And as we all know, when we use breakout rooms too, there's also that chance that we don't get to hear the other breakout rooms. Whereas if we were in a classroom, we would hear all of the thoughts and ideas of our students as they were working. So that was one challenge, and that we needed to overcome, and we really need to find out how do we solve this problem. And as I mentioned, student engagement was really low. Apart from being demotivated, there were some instances where our students would log into the Zoom room. They would turn on their cameras for a few seconds, and then after that, they would turn it off, and then they would also turn off their microphones. So just imagine you as a teacher, you're doing your discussions, and then suddenly you want to ask a question. But the problem is that called when you call a student to that to answer that question, it is a lot of us teachers were surprised that they weren't there despite them being logged in. And so that was also a problem for us teachers. And as a result of the student engagement being low and losing motivation, there were a lot of challenges in the submission of work. A lot of the students just simply told us or emailed us that I'm not feeling like submitting today, or they did not really communicate with us as we moved along in the online program. And so there were a lot of instances where where I would tell my team, okay, if they can't submit right now, then give them another deadline so that they can submit in another date. It was also up to the teachers to also be a little bit more flexible with those deadlines as well. And so, with those problems in mind, we had to look again. We had to change our tactics and strategies that we used inside our classrooms in order for us to really make sure that our classrooms and our classes were rich with student engagement. Student motivation would from a low point would become a high point, and we had to really motivate them to come to school. And so we tapped our network and our friends from different schools. Since we are an IB World School, which is an international program that is recognized worldwide, we were able to make use of the networks that or our friends from other schools in order for us to really gain an idea and an insight on how to prepare for an online learning environment. So we were thankful to our friends in Hong Kong, in China, who were able to share their different tips, tricks, and strategies to help cover the remaining weeks, or the weeks that their classes were canceled. We were very thankful for our friends in Hong Kong who had been doing online classes for over 2 or 3 months now, and so they had a wealth of information for us to share, and we were thankful for that. So with that in mind, we began reworking our classes to focus more on a balanced approach of synchronous and asynchronous learning. So as you can see, or if you've read a lot of articles so far, these are the two biggest words in online learning right now. Synchronous learning, the face-to-face interaction that we did, versus asynchronous learning, which was the independent learning, where our students would be able to balance whether they should balance the content that they're learning with content that they can research and do at their own time. And so with synchronous and asynchronous learning, we strove to really find that balance that would enable us to really maximize our students' learning, and to ensure that our students still get that experience that is uniquely part of our school's program, which is a program that is experiential and student centered at the same time. Okay. And so with synchronous and asynchronous learning, these were some of the ideas that really struck us the most, which was to reflect on the needs of the learners, which was something that we saw the moment our students started not enjoying online classes. Okay. We could also reuse known and proven methods of resources. and we would have to design learning for quick and agile delivery. So we had to really rethink, because coming into the online learning program, we were under the assumption that this would just be, or that this would simply be what we would normally do in a face-to-face class. But a lot of research that was coming out already really struck a point with us that learning in an online environment is not the same as learning in a physical classroom. The demands are uniquely different from one setup to the next. And so we cannot assume that just because we taught in a physical environment, the same experience can be emulated or transferred to an to an online learning environment. And so with that, there was a constant reflection and iteration for improvement. So with that in mind, we started looking at different models of synchronous and asynchronous learning. So our teacher, my math teacher, started looking at different websites and also learning platforms in order for him to be able to really reach out to the students. As we all know, math is quite hard in itself, and doing this in an online learning environment is already challenging. It raises a lot of questions of how do you ensure that students understand the process of learning about mathematics? How do we ensure that we give ample feedback for our students in order for them to be able to spot the errors and to be able to quickly think about how can we make sure that we don't make those errors again? So we leveraged the tools that were available to us. Our math teacher made use of Google Docs in order for him to come up with learning journals for our students. And in these learning journals, our students wrote about the mathematical processes that they underwent. Within those mathematical journals, our students also had the opportunity to seek feedback and advice from our teacher as well. And within that, we would also gain a feel of what our students were doing during that time. So it was, in a way, their writing gave us a glimpse into their mental capacity or their social emotional capacity during that time. On the second picture to your right, our math teacher, because he was faced with the challenge of not having a stable internet connection, he had to really be creative. A lot of us were using Zoom and Google Meet to facilitate learning in this environment. However, our teacher, despite many efforts of trying to get really good internet, he still encountered different problems with that. So he was unable to do face-to-face video conferencing. Nevertheless, he looked far and wide in the internet and found Dot Storm, which was like a Padlet wall where he was able to post those different questions in math, and he was able to provide a blank canvas for our students to really show their process in answering different mathematical questions. And if you can see at the farther right, that there was even a chat box embedded. So our students still had the opportunity to really talk amongst themselves, to discuss, and they had that blank canvas where they could see their mathematical concepts being applied through different word problems as well. Okay. For many of us teachers, we also started shifting to different modules of learning. And in these modules of learning, we really took the time to think about how can we make sure that the content that we are teaching could be covered in the shortest amount of time possible. Having a face-to-face class discussion with just a PowerPoint is tiring. And so what our teacher did, my language and literacy teacher did, was he created different modules that he would upload a day before or a week before for our students to work through just before classes begins. So in these modules, there would be those different examples, and there would be those different questions and research activities that our students can access as they do those modules. And because of those modules that already taught the content or teach the content, when our students go inside that online classroom, they are not just there to listen to the teacher, but they're actually there to engage in a discussion with their classmates and their teachers at the same time. So instead of spending an hour and a half just presenting the lesson via PowerPoint, which could also be done if you could just watch YouTube, the hours spent would have been done for more productive, insightful, and significant learning experiences for our students. So, with that in mind, our teacher really maximized, or my teacher really maximized the time in order for him to really have a good, hearty, and meaty discussion on different concepts rather than discussing the topics. Okay. And also, as mentioned, a lot of our engagements in school were really designed for community or for reaching out to the community. So, as mentioned in the past, we really value the community that we are in because they share or they have a lot of experiences um, in the real world aspect. So, our arts teacher who was doing a process portfolio or an art learning or an art exhibit with the students as part of the requirements of the program, really asked and tapped his network of different artists to come to Zoom. So we were thankful for Zoom and also this online learning because in the past it was quite difficult for us to get different resource speakers because of their schedules, because of the traffic in Manila, because of so many other reasons. But now with this whole COVID, with this whole COVID and online learning, we're now able to invite different resource speakers, and two of which were illustrators or artists for Marvel Comics, and they really talked about the process that they go through in learning and curating different art forms and art mediums so that they could be able to share a story. And with that, we really leverage the community that we know and that we have. So within our own teachers themselves have a strong network of different experts and resource speakers that we could invite. Okay? And apart from all of that, we really leverage the use of existing applications to allow for more student engagement and practical learning. So as we started getting more familiar with Zoom and also its collaboration and whiteboard strategies, our teachers and students got a little bit more creative in order for them to really understand the concepts. So as we all know, the typical picture of a teacher is the teacher with chalk or ngayon whiteboard and or whiteboard marker on a whiteboard. So we use those different interactive elements in Zoom in order for us to really emphasize a point and also to emphasize learning that can still continue on in an online learning environment. And we really leverage those applications. But do know that before we even use these applications, we had already tried them out in the past. So we did not want to introduce a new application to our students that they were unfamiliar with because we had a lot of experience wherein when students are exposed to a new application, there would still be a lot of questions that your class time would end up becoming a troubleshooting session. So the applications that we used were used already prior to this whole lockdown and to this whole online learning environment. So our students were quite familiar with its use already. And so those 3 weeks, it went by really fast. We were really happy with the outcome as teachers. And I decided I wanted to feel or I wanted to get a feel of what my students experienced and what was their feedback so that we would know how to better or improve our online learning for the next school year. And so I sent out a Google form where there were these different questions just for feedback. What did you like about the online learning program? And as you can see here, a lot of my students, they really like that they were able to accomplish tasks and finish work at their own pace and time. They really enjoyed the fact that during class, it felt like their usual discussions inside the classroom. The topics that were covered were really discussed in depth, and they were still able to actively listen and participate in class. What they liked was the schedule because it gave them enough time to prepare and allowed them to work at their own pace. And I liked the calls because they were able to see their classmates and their friends, which is something that's also equally important as well. Now, in terms of feedback, I really wanted to get their insights on this because this was something new to our school, and it was something new for many of our teachers. And so the feedback was basically having more activities within the class, both individually and as groups, and not just giving them as homework. So that was something that we would have to take into consideration as we move on to our new school year. um, a lot of them were thinking also about how to better present in an online class, because instead of having to like constantly shift the camera, their screen shares from one person to the next, a lot of them would prefer that this would be presented um, in an organized or in a better way. Okay, so a lot of them also shared that some of the problems were more technical. This was like the internet connections that they were constantly experiencing, the lag behind it. So these were some things that were beyond our control, but it was something that they also would bring up to their parents as they also prepare for the online classes. Okay, sorry. All right. And so with that in mind, there was this in there was this emphasis on different modalities in online learning. Okay, and those modalities we really explored, and how we could ensure that our modalities would be able to serve our students effectively. Okay, so as mentioned in the past or in the previous slides, we really looked at synchronous and asynchronous learning, and we decided let's make use of those different um, learning environments in order for our students to really have an engaging and to have an engaging class session. And so we started looking at flipped learning, where we would give our students the content outside of the learning classes so that they could focus on learning all of that content beforehand. And once they go into the online classes, they could just simply apply that learning inside the classroom. Apart from the flipped learning, which we really felt had to go hand in hand, was really revisiting the cycle of inquiry that we use. And we look back at the inquiry based classroom. What does it require? Because a lot of us, there is the tendency, myself included, that we would fall into the trap of just teaching content and versus teaching different concepts. And so, with an inquiry based classroom and really rethinking about um, how to teach concepts rather than content, I look back at the inquiry cycle that I was quite familiar with and that I thoroughly enjoyed in order for my students to really maximize and learn different skills during this period. So, in an inquiry based classroom, we really focus on students' questions because these drive the learning in our classrooms. These drive the learning that would really help see where we're going and whether to see if we are successful in building students' understanding. Because factual knowledge is factual knowledge. This can be learned and Googled at any time. But in an inquiry based classroom, which we have always strongly advocated and emphasized, is that we want them to come away with a deeper understanding and valuing of their learning. And so our goal really was to bring out those skills of research and communication and social or collaborative skills in order for our students to engage in critical research and thinking as well. going hand in hand with our inquiry cycle was the question on problem based learning. Because in the past, it was always or not in the past, but ever since, we have always focused on, so this is what we are learning. These are the concepts that we are investigating and inquiring on. But what is the end goal of our unit, or the concept that we're learning? And that end goal should be able to answer a problem in our community, or it should be able to um, help our students commit to responsible action, or in a way, it should be able to come up with a project that is both meaningful, significant, and contextualized or personalized for that student. And with problem based learning, we really looked at what are the different problems in the concepts that we're learning, in order for them to come up with a project that is meaningful for them. And so those projects could be like different infographics and posters that talk about the current issues and problems of society. It could be a research paper on different communities that were impacted, and we made sure that all of the different subjects would be properly integrated. So when they engaged in a research paper, they made use of the ideas and skills in mathematics and science, in order for them to come up with a research that is grounded on facts and based out of credible information, which is something that we have constantly highlighted as well. And so, with those in mind, here are some of the strategies that I'd like to really share with you, teachers, also, which is, let's focus on the big ideas and the concepts. Again, topics are something that you can Google off, which our students are quite familiar with. Topics are something that they can watch on YouTube, or learn from an article that they read. But when we focus on big ideas and concepts, we'll be able to answer, or hopefully answer, the age old question of, I only have this X amount of time. How do I know my students are learning? It's still something that we are trying to get used to. Um, even though we've strongly advocated this, there are still some things that we still need to work out as teachers as well. Big ideas and concepts is something that's not learned in a day. It's practiced, and we constantly try and do that as well. Okay. Factual and content knowledge can be chunked. So, as mentioned in the past, different modules, or using asynchronous learning time would really be beneficial for a lot of students, because it would help them learn these content at their own pace without the pressure of class time. But at the same time, it also gives them an opportunity to learn it piecemeal, or bit by bit, so that they'll be able to understand it better. One thing that we really emphasized during this online class was to provide ample time for student feedback and consultation. Gone, even in the past, we really valued feedback and consultation, because this was the moment that students would be able to share the process of their thinking and their learning. It is in these sessions that we are able to see where the misconceptions are arising, and also some ideas that they still struggle with. And so, in an online learning environment, we continued this process of really giving our students our time actually. So, as much as possible in our asynchronous time, even though they're supposed to be working, we would also carve out time to talk to them, ask them, how are you? How was your day? What struggles are you experiencing right now? And because of that, our students valued those moments, because it gave them a breather from actually learning, and just share and talk to you as a teacher. Okay. And lastly, I really stressed this during the 3 weeks of that period, that our students and also my teachers, they should prioritize health and family matters. During this time, it is quite unforeseen that they would have to go outside because they were the tributes to buying grocery items and the like, and so they were excused from the afternoon work so that they could focus on that. And during this period, it's really important for us to prioritize those first. So even if we are working from home, we still have to be understanding, and also we have to be understanding of the situations that our teachers and our students are also in. But we just hope that also that there are some limits and guidelines that would help ensure that this is not abused as well. Okay. So actually, one of the biggest questions that came out of this whole period was assessment, or teach, or how do we assess our students? And I know that this is a topic that is highly controversial for many teachers, because they're constantly asking, how do we ensure that in an online learning system that they won't be cheating, that they won't be that they that will be able to see whether they really understand. And so it's a question that has been asked in countless research, and even different schools have different answers for that. In this talk, I cannot even give a definitive answer, but there is this question that has been really that has been at the top of my head for the longest time. Is this really the time to give out paper and pen tests? And so, with that question in mind, we looked at different examples from other schools. So, some of those teachers, or some of the teachers and talks that we attended, there was the question on how do we ensure that the assessment that we're giving out is reliable and also valid, which is common in a lot of our assessment learning. How do we ensure that academic honesty and integrity is also maintained during these online tests? And how do we ensure the familiarization with these different tools as well? So M. Budiman from Universitas Indonesia shared that these were some of the things that he did. Instead of taking formal exams, they gave out take home exams. Their assessments focused more on the learning process, the development of those different skills, rather than, again, factual knowledge. And lastly, they build trust and integrity as part of the learning process. So they had to ensure that, or they had to place their trust in their students, knowing that yes, there is a possibility that there will be cheating that happens, because what can we do? Um, these are situations and circumstances that are beyond our control, and that is something that we cannot really force. So instead of really thinking about paper and pen tests, why don't we focus on developing their skills, applying that knowledge that they know to a skill such as research, collaboration, thinking skills as well. So that was something that their school had to shift towards too. Okay. So looking at all of those different examples, here were some ideas that I also gained from reading this article on Edutopia, which was really to stop assessing everything, assigning performance tasks and performance items, use conversations, leverage technology tools, and use professional judgment. Let me go through each one by one. So, in terms of stop assessing everything, it's really just focusing on the essential. Not everything that should be covered should be covered. Really focus on what are the big ideas. Do they really need to know the capital of of the Philippines, or is it better for them to understand the concept behind geography? So it's really focusing on big ideas, and clarify also the standards. Which standards are we prioritizing right now? Is it the standard of knowing factual and content knowledge versus seeing our students, or demonstrating, or the students demonstrating those skills that they are learning? Okay. So for the second point, which was to assign performance tasks and items, it's really shifting away from paper and pen tests. When our students do these performance tasks, it requires our students to apply their knowledge and understanding in new and novel situations. So it's really an emphasis on projects that would help our students demonstrate what they've learned, and leveraging also on the needs of the community. So we had to integrate subjects to cover more skills, and also look into the community at large and see what projects can we come up with that makes use of everything that we've learned inside our classroom to help the community. It goes hand in hand also with the problem or project based learning. Okay. Third point was performance based tasks are research based practices that really assess student learning and understanding. However, even though we are using these performance tasks, sometimes when we assign it, it could be, though long term, it could become cumbersome or burdensome for our students. And in turn, this becomes stressful. And so it was necessary for us to really look into the skills of each of our subjects and look and find out how we can integrate um, those skills that are necessary and essential as well. It was also necessary for us to break down the performance tasks so that they can be able to learn a specific skill that would build up to the bigger performance task as well. Okay. And as mentioned in the past or in the previous slide, we really leveraged on the use of conversations amongst our students, because when we converse with our students and when we use projects and in classroom, students have to be prepared to explain their thinking and their learning. And when we listen to our students, that's when we see whether our students really understood the concept and idea behind what they're learning. It is taxing, but it actually provides you with so much data that cannot be found in a paper and pencil test, because it would also show whether you have also been teaching effectively or not. Okay. So with that in mind, it is important for teachers to leverage different technology tools. So this would allow students to become content creators and not just consumers. So as we've seen in the past years, a lot of Filipino personalities are moving away from acting and or producing and from acting, and rather they're shifting to become YouTube personalities or to be able to create content. Though we don't necessarily tell our students to become YouTube influencers or YouTube creators, but we ask them to constantly create content that would show and demonstrate their learning. And at the same time, we have to be able to provide them ample time for them to learn those different skills and give them also chances and opportunities for them to explore those tools that they are using. Okay. And so last idea is we have to use the assessments, both paper and pen tests, rubrics, all of that, to inform our teaching, because from there we will know that whether we should reteach or we should look for consultations with our students or to seek feedback from our students as well. Okay, so those are some ideas that that I'm sharing with you, teachers. Again, these are also just new. These are also some ideas that have been um, done in the past, and hopefully we can continue this as well. Now, for the students, what are some tips that they can use or that they can do to prepare for online learning? Simply, it's you stay organized to basically find the place in your house or in your community where you won't be disturbed. For the parents who are listening, please also value and prioritize this time, because this is the time that they are learning. Let's give that to them. So even though they are at home, we have to give them that time to really study as well. Okay, avoid multitasking. That's a myth that a lot of psychologists have already said, that there is no such thing as multitasking. Our brains cannot handle multiple tasks all at the same time. That is not true. I'm sorry. That is definitely true. Our brains cannot. And so the students, the teachers themselves, let's not multitask, because when we multitask, the quality of our work suffers, and the quality of our engagement also suffers, because our brain is not focused onto that task as well. Okay, create a schedule. It's important that you follow that schedule as well, because it will give you a routine. I know that it's already been how many months since you've been at home, but with a schedule, you'll be able to plan out your day, your month, and all of the deadlines that you need to work as well. Working hand in hand with staying organized is to ensure that you have all of your materials ready. It's quite difficult if you keep on moving to different places, or looking for different materials as you're learning, because you also suffer. You don't get to listen to the thoughts of your classmates or the ideas of your classmates, and you also miss out on different or important events or facts as well. And so make sure that in your work area, wherever that may be, you have your materials ready. Okay, consult with your teachers, because during this time, that's the best way that you'll be able to really ask, probe, and talk to your teachers in a way that that you would have taken for granted in the past. And just like, and for the teachers, prioritize your family and health matters also. Okay, so as we come to the last part of my presentation, here are just some things for us to consider. First off, it's for both teachers and students, less is more. During this period, it's really all about simplifying everything for the moment. For a lot of teachers, you might have attended a lot of trainings and webinars, and all of these trainings and webinars would have told you, oh, you should use this application, you should use this learning management system. You as a teacher, you need to reflect, what is the essential, what is the most important thing that I need to prioritize right now? Is it giving out, or is it using that really fancy application because it looks nice, or using this application that I have used in the past, which has really been helpful which has really been helpful. At the same time, just because we are in an online learning environment doesn't mean that everything has to be done online. Let us be creative in the practices that we've done in the past, so that we could be able to really engage and interact with our students. Okay? Now, hand in hand with the less is more principle is really managing expectations. If you really want to make use of different applications and technologies in your online classrooms, be ready to manage that your well-crafted plan will not actually will not be successful on the first run, or the second, or even the third run. And so you have to manage your expectations. Feel free to do different sessions with your teachers, to do a run through, or a mock presentation, so that you'll be familiar and also anticipate the different problems that it may arise. Technology is very convenient for us. It really eases the burden, but sometimes, because like man, we are technology can also be a failure as well. So it's best that we plan ahead as well. Okay. Now more so than ever, it's important for us to connect and communicate with our students, with our teachers, and with the community. With technology, we will be able to use that. We will be able to connect with all of our students. But one thing that would make a difference is to be able for them to connect and communicate meaningfully. Let's really let's really build that relationship between our students, or among our students, so that they have our trust, because during this time, this is what they need the most. They need to see a familiar face that will continue to guide them for the next 10 months, or how many months left in their school year. So with that, it's important for us to really make sure that our students feel safe in that online learning environment, and that they can talk to you for any issues or anything that may arise during the time. Okay. So with that, I say thank you very much for having me this afternoon. And once again, I'm Alfonso Mangubat. You may reach me at these different through my email. It's supposed to be alfonso.mangubat@gmail.com. You may also reach me via Twitter. And I also have a YouTube channel where I have posted a lot of instructional videos and also different professional development videos as well, in terms of online learning.